Game over, man. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Why so serious?
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Ooh, welcome to episode 662 for November 11th, 2025, and I'm Jaded Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody. It is winding down 2025. It's almost done. It's hard to believe, but
It's almost Thanksgiving, dude. I mean, holy cow.
yeah, I know. But look, I feel like movies have been ramping up for the most part in terms of quality, which is very exciting. I don't know if 2025 has been my favorite film of the decade so far, but it has been making up for that in
It's
the
getting
last
better.
month or so.
There's a lot to be excited about for once.
There
When
is.
I say for once, I mean over the past few months.
The consistency is getting there for me, for sure. And I know there's some hard hitters still to come. So my top 20 is starting to round out itself a little bit. And I say that almost theoretically because what I've come to realize, and we've talked about this before, but this time of year it especially becomes more evident because everyone is releasing their updated top 10s and their top 20s and their favorite films of the year.
Yeah.
And so every week it feels like there's always a moment where that trends in film Twitter.
Yep.
And I am reminded that I am way behind the curve in terms of actually organizing that list. I have just a broad group of films that are unranked.
well, we've had a few of our writers that attended the festival circuit, but you and I haven't, right? So
No.
On one hand, we might be behind as far as getting our overall thoughts and maybe a preliminary ranking just for ourselves to get things going. We may be behind. We may be behind in that, but we also are kind of behind in how many movies we've seen. Like the fact
that too.
Yeah.
Certainly catching up with movies. For example, I finally got to see Begonia today as we are recording this. So I'm a few weeks behind the curve, but finally got a chance to see that one. So that is part of it. And also the last time I actively sat down and organized my top 20 was back in June or early July when we did our
Mid-year
top
report,
10 movies of the year so far. That's the last time I actually organized the ranking for this year.
And it never
I've not
stays
done
the
that
same.
since.
That's still very preliminary. And even some of those
Yes,
movies
of
we talked
course.
about then we were still very fresh on. And some of those movies back then, I've even still had a bit of a emotional shift towards, I'll simply say. Like my ranking back then is not my ranking now, even if it were the same movies.
Yeah, and that's why when we talk about something like Sentimental Value, for example, or Die My Love, or, in any of these films we've talked about in recent weeks, if I love the movie, and those two come to mind because we've talked about them recently.
Right.
If I love them and I think they're some of the best movies I've seen so far, it's usually a vague, this is one of the best films I've seen so far. And the reason I say that is because I don't have any of it ranked to this
You don't have any
point.
idea where it goes.
I can't be like, Sentimental Value, that might be number 2 for me. I don't know. I honestly have no idea.
Well, then you
I
run
have
into
not
this
done that
risk.
ranking yet.
You run into this risk where you see something like Sentimental Value and your instinct is to say that might be the best movie of the year. And then you realize, oh crap, wait, 28 years later was also this year.
Yeah,
Dang,
I
I can't
just-
forget about that.
Yeah. Since we did that exercise back in the summer, the one thing I have done is I just group them. So I write them down in terms of like, I guess it's more like a pyramid is
Sure.
maybe the best way to describe it. So I have my top tier list. These are my A films. And then these are then I have like my B list and then kind of my C list. And so they're kind of grouped based off of the strength of my likeness of the films. And that's it. Like, that's about as far as I've gone to this point. And then in the next month, once it comes time to, hey, we actually have to start formulating these lists and wrestling with it.
Yeah.
That's when I'm like, okay, So like probably in the next 2 weeks, once we get to Thanksgiving, and by then I should have seen Hamnet and a few other of these heavy contenders.
Yeah.
Then I can really start to put something together, and now I can start to wrestle with it more.
Otherwise, it seems a little premature to start ranking things before you have something like a Hamnet that you fully expect to kind of break the list in some ways.
And look, that's part of it. Part of it for me, and this is obviously just personal, nothing against people that keep a ranking all year long. But some of it is I am constantly wrestling with these movies. I might like them initially, and then they grow on me, or maybe you're lesser on them as you go. Die My Love, for example, and Sentimental Value, maybe both of those come to mind immediately for a reason, because I can't stop thinking about either of those movies.
Same.
Deeply, deeply love them. So they've only grown more in my mind. So that's part of it. You know, you kind of want to let it waft over you for a little bit. But the real answer to this is that I'm just really busy and I get lazy.
I was going to say, well, that's kind of my answer as well. On top of the fact that I know a lot of my thoughts on these movies are constantly changing and evolving. And I've come to accept that when we do a top 10 at the end of our awards campaign, it's never going to be set in stone. It's always what it reflects at that moment. Right. And I kind of like that it's meant to be a very short-term reflection, that even just a few weeks or even months later, you might even second guess what you already published. That doesn't mean it's set in stone. I think that's actually part of the fun of being a film critic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I look forward to wrestling with that in the next few weeks, because again, we have a month and a half to go. It's very exciting. We're getting to the end here. So we'll have more year-end fun activity stuff. The InSession Film Awards, of course, is typically that second week of January. So we're about 2 months out from this recording when we do that InSession Film Awards. So we'll have some updates on that coming soon. Very much look forward to getting into that. Okay, so this week, using Richard Linklater as inspiration, he had one film that already came out, Blue Moon. We talked about it. We gave that a review here on the show. And Brendan was a little bit more positive than I was, but we were both positive on the film.
Yeah, we still had similar reservations. I think those reservations affected you a little bit more than it did me. But in a way, we kind of came out of that movie the same way.
Yeah. It's hard for me to dislike Richard Linklater. Yeah. I obviously had my issues with that film, but I couldn't walk away going, oh, that was a waste of time. I just never feel that way with Linklater, ever.
No.
So I did like it. And he has a second movie coming out this weekend and hitting Netflix soon. Nouvelle Vague is coming out, and this is his rendition, his interpretation of the making of the film Breathless. And I have seen it. I have thoughts on it. Brendan will hopefully get a chance to see it soon. But we're going to use that film as inspiration as we delve into our top 5 movies about movies. And I'm excited for this for a couple of reasons. One, I can't believe we've never done this ranking before, this top 5.
We've talked about it, I think, off air a few times, and I feel like we were just saving it for the right opportunity. And this is certainly a great opportunity to talk about this topic. Yeah. At the same time, much like our earlier top 5 from a few moments ago, a few shows ago, when we coupled that with, coincidentally, Linklater in Blue Moon, we talked about our top 5 hangout movies, right? And that's a list that we openly recognized. We could probably do that top 5 multiple times, right? I think we can do this top 5 multiple times as well.
Well, and it's funny that you say that, because the other point that I was about to make is that this is a really rich topic.
It is, yeah.
There are some fantastic movies that we are going to bring up in that conversation. So, yeah, I think it is absolutely right to do it a second time at some point down the road. Top 5 movies about movies. And, of course, we'll give a review of Nouvelle Vague in the next week or so, when Brendan gets a chance to see it, we will give that one a conversation. Very much look forward to that. Okay, before we get to that top 5, however, I do want to update Brendan and everybody from last week. We talked about the Stingray movie music channel and some of the incredible ironies and coincidences of my life.
I love that your playlist has been stolen. You get that royalty check yet?
And it's funny because in the last week, since we had that conversation, I've seen a few of those tracks come up. So I've snapped photos and I have sent evidence to Brendan that I'm not.
I'm gonna look
making
at them
this up.
again. No, I was, my jaw can hit the floor on a few of them.
Yeah. And I have more photos on my phone as well, but I didn't want to overwhelm Brendan with just a bunch of snapshots. But yes, I have photographic evidence. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you have a Samsung TV, it comes with the Samsung television. And one of the channels is called Stingray Movie Music. And all they do all day long is play movie scores and tracks from movies. And we went into some great detail last week as to why I love this channel. So if you missed last week's show, I encourage you to go and give that a listen.
For those watching on YouTube, just to show you all how niche this channel is, this is one of them that JD sent me. I'm going to get it really close to my camera. That is from Alexander Payne's Nebraska.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, see, there it is. There it is again, playing that track that I deeply love from that score. Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, I was definitely not making that up.
That's incredible.
Just before I got on here, I didn't really write this down, but they were doing James Bond songs.
Oh,
and tracks from those movies.
Okay.
So that was one of the themes that they were delving into.
So they were doing like songs,
yeah, but they were instrumentals of the songs. They weren't sung, which I thought was an interesting choice.
That's clever.
And that is a deliberate choice because, as I noted last week, there have been times, such as when I heard the Inside Llewyn Davis "Fare Thee Well" track, they will show like full-on songs as well.
Sure.
But the James Bond themes, those were instrumentals, which I thought was fascinating.
Interesting.
But this last week, I also got to see some interesting renditions from La La Land that was new. The 2014 food film Chef, I thought was an interesting little jam. Again, that's not what you expect. And that's what I love about this channel, right? Is because it's not Oscar-winning scores all of the time. It's not the classic themes.
It's not even movies that are known for their music.
Exactly. It's Chef. It's Z for Zachariah. That's another one that I've seen a couple of times.
The movie with Margot Robbie and Chiwetel Ejiofor?
Yes, that film.
My goodness.
Yes. I'm telling you. And again, those are scores, tracks from those films that I had on my playlist. How many other cinephiles go that deep? I'm sure there's plenty, but I don't know. Like, it might be a smaller percentage that goes, you know what, Z for Zachariah. Yeah, I'm going to add that to my playlist.
They are clearly, they being Stingray, they're clearly catering this channel to cinephiles. So it wasn't just your playlist that they probably saw. And I'm guessing your playlist on Spotify was a public list, or was it?
Yes. No, it was public. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably how they got access to it. They probably got access to a few others just to use as a frame of reference. So that has to be what has happened here. Yeah,
I'm more and more convinced that they stole my, and that's why I don't have that account anymore. 100%. That's what happened.
You technically do have that account again, just in a different medium.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. He gave it back to you, just not the way you expected.
And that's okay, because now it comes with visual movie clips as well, and I love that.
Yeah, it comes with a visual aid.
comes with a visual aid, and yeah, who doesn't love that? So
Yeah.
no, it's been fun. I didn't get a chance. This last week was real busy with Sam and some of his activities, so I didn't get a chance to indulge like I usually do. But anytime I have the opportunity, I am watching that channel. It's really great.
For you, it
So-
sounds like great background noise too. Just
Oh, it is.
kind of waft with it.
It's great. And, they have trivia. I think I noted that last week a couple of times throughout the hour. They have trivia that relates to the theme of the hour. And so,
Yeah, you did say.
yeah, I deeply love that a lot. And it was really funny because it was earlier today or yesterday, I was in terms of like background music. I was going to get Andrew because he was needing help getting some toys or something like that. But that channel, it's continually churning out music. And I walk over to like where his toy chest is, and I hear a theme that I somewhat recognize, but I wasn't exactly sure what it was. And it was funny because I turn around and it is the 1999 movie. What was the one with Michael Caine that he won the Oscar for?
The Cider House Rules.
The Cider House Rules. That's what it was. Because I turned around and that's what it is. I'm like, oh my God, I just watched that movie. Like I just watched it.
Says a lot about that
few
movie
months
that
ago.
you says a lot about that movie you didn't remember the title.
Yeah. Well,
But
I
still, like,
recognized what it was, but yes.
But
And
still,
there
like,
was
that, again,
another.
that's an odd choice for a channel like that. I mean, that's just wild.
Yeah. And there was another 99 movie. I'm trying to remember because I was like, oh my God, that's another one that I just watched a few months ago. I'm trying to remember, but like I've seen a few 99 movies that we recently talked about.
Well, that's no coincidence. We just did our 1999 retrospective.
Exactly.
Big Brother is listening. He's always
all
listening.
the time. Yeah, but I'm going to start taking more detailed notes so that way when I come on here to update, you're never going to believe what happened this week.
Maybe we should partner with Stingray. We can actually use
We
that as a
should.
promotional
If
stuff for them.
anyone from Stingray is listening, please reach out. I would love to talk to you.
Hey,
Genuinely.
future sponsorship maybe?
Yes, I would love that. I would love to collaborate. Please reach out. All right. Before we get to the top 5, I have a question for you, Brendan.
Should I be worried?
Is the biopic dead? Is it gone forever? Should it be gone forever?
No, it should not be gone forever. It's definitely in a state of questionable flux right now. I mean, a movie like Oppenheimer is proof that the biopic is not dead. You could still do creative things with it. The music biopic is maybe in the state of biggest flux right now. I still would not say that it's dead. We have seen a few examples sprinkled throughout the years, diamonds in the rough that don't follow the Wikipedia style format that we tend to criticize, that I still love when we occasionally get the likes of Miles Ahead or Better Man or Blaze or Born to Be Blue. And some of these I know are closing in on 10 years old. So I guess it is kind of a problem.
That's kind of why I asked the question, because I agree with you. From time to time, we get some great biopics, Oppenheimer certainly being quintessential. But outside of a few notable directors, it feels like this is a film that Hollywood is pushing hard because it's easy to make, and for some reason they think audiences still want this. But I want to look at the evidence.
Okay.
And recent evidence. And because again, if we cling on to the biopic of 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, the answer is obviously very different because biopics have been hugely successful financially, awards wise, and to your point, even critically. But in recent years, just this year alone, we have Christie recently which did not do all that great with critics. And there was, of course, the report that sparked incredible discourse over the weekend regarding its box office. It was one of the worst openings ever for a biopic. So there's that movie. There was Swiped earlier this year. I don't know if anyone saw that movie. I don't think I've seen a single review for it.
I didn't even know about it for a while. And
Yes.
I know what it's about. And given the subject matter, I don't think I'm interested in that.
No, it's not a priority for me. I'll just say that. Springsteen, which, that feels like it's an awards player, could be an awards player, but I feel like that came and went without the usual fanfare that music biopics tend to get. Even though there was a decent amount at marketing, I think that also quite underperformed at the box office. The Smashing Machine, set up to be a huge awards player, has been pretty much a dud. Matthew McConaughey and The Lost Bus kind of comes and goes. I mean, it's on Apple, so how many people saw it? People probably don't know about it, and it's not going to be an awards player. So those are a few recent examples. The one counter argument to this, ironically, at least with 2025, I do think is Richard Linklater's Blue Moon. And while I am lesser on it, I'd say like a lot of people really liked
it's a
that
good
film.
movie. Well, would we be able to count Hamnet in that?
Well, that's it. I haven't seen that one, so I don't know. But if we do, and again, I don't want to get ahead of myself because, like, I don't know. I don't want to speak to it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, and you don't want to set yourself up for failure if you don't love it as much as you want to.
Yeah, and it might not be a true biopic. It might.
It's more historical, more of a true story than it is a biopic.
Yeah.
And honestly, like a movie that's a true story versus a movie that's a biopic are sometimes very different things.
Yes, exactly. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself. And I think there's a few others that are coming out in December. And who's to say? Like Song Sung Blue is a December release. Maybe that'll be great. Who knows?
I've heard mixed things about that one.
I have as well. That's why, I don't know.
You're right that when it comes to the biopic, at least of the 2020s, if it's not directed by a Christopher Nolan or Martin Scorsese, it doesn't quite have the same impact. They almost feel like they're made by committees than they are by directors often. It almost seems as though the biopic genre is in a similar state as the Marvel Cinematic Universe is right now. So I wouldn't say it's dead, but I would say it's still kind of lingering in a similar stage of uncertainty with the occasional hit here and there if they get the right talent on board.
Yeah, and for sure. And again, I think what's interesting is how these films leave room for lots of debate. Because even when we go to last year is interesting, admittedly, because you have a movie like Better Man, for example, which a lot of people really enjoyed. I didn't love it as much as others, but it also wasn't this huge box office sensation either. People didn't care. Cinephiles cared.
Yeah.
But the larger audience very much did not.
Right.
A Complete Unknown, same thing. It kind of had these varied responses. I didn't love it. Others very much did. The larger audience did not care. Maria, same thing there. The Fire Inside felt like it got lukewarm responses. But
that one could have been a hit. That one honestly, I think the studios failed the release strategy on that one, I think.
Yeah. And again, like the one outlier from last year that I can think of, I'm sure there are others, but the one that comes to mind is I'm Still Here, which was never meant to be a box office sensation. That was a foreign language film that was always going to be just an Oscars player.
Right.
And was great. That's a really great biographical drama. And again, I'm sure there are others, especially when we're talking foreign language films, and I feel like that is its own category, probably separate from what the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah, that's very separate. They are not the same.
Yeah, so we should probably exclude that altogether. But when we're talking about North American Hollywood movies, especially, it feels like the biopic is hanging on by a thread.
It's in trouble. The reason why I don't want to say it's dead is because by saying that, it seems to suggest that there's nothing that's going to come out in the future that could revive it. And I still think there's potential hope for that.
Well, and that's what brings us to Michael. So we get that trailer this week, and in terms of the progression as it relates to quality, I don't think that it's going to solve any answers. It looks incredibly conventional. It doesn't look good at all. But
yeah,
here's the other side of the equation. Could it revive the audiences in going to the theaters to see a biopic? One thinks that if marketed well, that it could be another Bohemian Rhapsody, potentially.
Yeah, I think that's what they're going for. I don't think the makers or even the studios behind that movie really care about revitalizing this genre. They just care about it being a hit like Bohemian Rhapsody. It's why the trailer very clearly states from producer Graham King of Bohemian Rhapsody. So people going into this movie know that it's from the same team who helped really essentially just finance Bohemian Rhapsody. But it's clearly cut from that same cloth. The movie's directed by Anton Fuqua, and I saw none of his sensibilities in that trailer whatsoever. So this is clearly a very anonymous movie, but I mean, this is Michael Jackson. You're going to get people interested in just the sheer subject matter. So
yeah,
the movie's going to be a hit regardless of if it's good.
Well, and that's what I want to think, because again, it's Michael Jackson. Just for sheer curiosity, you would think it's going to have at least decent numbers opening weekend.
That's okay. Maybe I'm going to eat those words. When I say a hit, I really just mean an opening weekend hit.
Yeah.
Because if the movie's terrible, the word of mouth is going to destroy it.
It's not going to be good. And you're right. A lot of people probably won't go see it on opening weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think they're hoping to have a Bohemian Rhapsody type run.
Yeah.
With that film. And if they market it right, if they hit the musical sensation in the right places and they tap on that nostalgia beat, perhaps it will be successful enough for the larger audience. And again, in the same ways that Bohemian Rhapsody did. But that was an extremely sanitized, not very good movie. And Michael looks like it's going to be the exact same. Extremely sanitized, very superficial, and lacking all kinds of nuance.
Yeah.
But if you have fun music, if you have fun performances, and just in terms of getting people to the theaters, like it might attract people to the theaters. Who knows?
I want to look at this history now, and I can't do it now because it would just take too much time, and I'm going to be here typing and doing research during a podcast, which is not fun to listen to. But it does have me thinking, what did biopics, specifically music biopics in this case, what did they look like stylistically, interest-wise? What did they look like before Bohemian Rhapsody came along? Because Bohemian Rhapsody was a hit. We didn't like it. Critics didn't like it. But ever since Bohemian Rhapsody, I felt like this formula has become way more prevalent. Did that set an even worse precedent for this genre going forward? So by saying that, if Michael ends up becoming a hit, will then Hollywood get the wrong message once again? So could it actually be the adverse of what we're talking about?
I mean, I didn't go all the way back to 2017. I have a few years in front of me, which is why I wanted to talk about the biopic in recent years, because where it was in 2017, I don't think is all that applicable to right now.
Right.
The way, where it was 10, 15 years ago, it's not applicable to where it is now. But I do think you are right that a lot of films have tried to follow that formula for better or worse, mostly for worse. And it's led to this point where that film, that type of movie, that genre, it's extremely hit or miss. It's always been a bit hit or miss, but I feel like even more so these years. And I say that at best. Mostly, I think this genre is really bad. I think it's hanging on by a thread. You have Oppenheimers, you have the Blue Moons, and like there are some good films here. Don't get me wrong. Like Young Woman in the Sea, for example, I thought was a good movie. I don't think it's saving the genre by any means, but I enjoyed it. Some people might enjoy Christie. I've seen some positive takes for that film. But generally, again, going back to my opening thought on this, it's like there's just so much room for debate. There's just not a film outside of Oppenheimer where you go, man, everyone came together for that movie. Like that just doesn't exist.
As far as biopics are concerned, you're right.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
specifically.
And looking at just a very rough list of biopics from the past 5 years, aside from Oppenheimer, you're right. None of these movies really brought people together. And even the ones that were good just didn't really garner enough of an audience. Like, remember that movie Blackberry from 2023? That was a pretty good movie. Judas and the Black Messiah probably should have been a big hit, but it sadly wasn't. King Richard was fine, but it is what it is. It's a very typical sports drama. Mank was a very interesting movie, but that's more for us than it is, for them.
Yeah.
So in a way, that
I liked it, but
but it doesn't really count because it's going to alienate most people. But there's not many. You're absolutely right.
Maestro, again, I felt like had lukewarm responses, but if memory serves, that didn't garner a huge box office receipt, right? Like that, like people didn't go in droves to see that.
Yeah. Like
they did for A Star Is Born. I feel like that one was better served financially. I could be mistaken there. But generally, and that's the other side of this, and that's why I wanted to pave both sides of the road, that even when the quality is there, and again, there's tons of debate on this, but even when the quality is there, people are not going to the theaters to see these movies. They're just not. So like, I don't...
That's what they're trying to do with Michael. They're trying to make that change.
And that's why I wonder with Michael. Like, I know that it's a huge name, and that will absolutely get at least some people to the theater. But this movie, the biopic, it's not a draw anymore. So I wonder if there is a ceiling to Michael, as huge of a name as it is. And to your point, if it comes out and critics are like, this is one of the worst films I've ever seen, and it might not be that extreme, but if it gets bad reviews, does that limit people even more? Probably. So I don't know. I'm curious. I'm curious to see where that pendulum swings.
If you want to get people back in the theater to see a music biopic, you have to announce and finally make a movie like, I don't know, a young Taylor Swift in high school before she was famous. Reenact that story. People will show up to that. Do I want to see that? No. But if you made that movie, people would show up to that.
Yeah. One movie that I'm looking at here that could be an interesting comp is Elvis from 2022. So that comes out. Yeah. And it had, that movie's made on an $85 million budget. And it grosses $288 million worldwide. So pretty successful. And had some Oscar buzz. I can't remember what all was nominated for that movie, if anything. But it was in the conversation.
It was certainly, for Austin Butler. There was a lot of talk around him more specifically. What was that nominated for? I think it actually did get a Best Picture nomination, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. I got a ton of stuff now that I'm looking at it. See, my memory just isn't what it used to be. Yeah. again, people that are familiar with awards, and again, this is not an awards podcast, so don't come at me. Do not tweet at me, okay?
No, we talk about the movies. We're not here for those stats.
Yeah, I'm not here to talk about awards, but yes, it got nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, Sound, Production Design, Cinematography, Makeup and Hairstyling, Costume, Editing. So yeah, it got a ton of stuff. 9 BAFTA nominations as well, won 4 BAFTAs. So it was a big success financially and in terms of award season.
Yeah.
So that's outside of Oppenheimer, and especially when we're talking about music, that's outside of Bohemian Rhapsody. That's the one. So maybe that's the comp here. And again, that was 2022. So since 2017, when Bohemian Rhapsody come out,
that was 2018, I think it was.
2018.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we have one example. A Complete Unknown obviously had some Oscar nominations.
Yeah, there was some push there.
But it didn't have the financial backing that something like Elvis did.
Yeah, it didn't create a cultural impact.
No,
it's not. I mean, Elvis is not necessarily a cultural film necessarily, but for a brief moment, it felt like it kind of was, at least for that year. And yeah, if one of these movies did have that kind of imprint that wasn't Oppenheimer, at least a movie like Elvis, which is a movie I didn't love, at least it had some personality when compared to the likes of Bohemian Rhapsody, for instance. Like, it felt like it was still made by a filmmaker and had some passion behind it. So it at least felt like a movie, despite having some of the similar problems that we tend to see with most of these biopics. So I'm at least okay with that film being one of the relative successes that we've seen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point. And I do want to be a little fair to a Complete Unknown. I did not realize this, so forgive my ignorance here, but it did garner $140 million worldwide.
Yeah, that's not bad.
That's not bad. 75 of that is domestic. So that's not terrible, but still, even so, I don't think it had the cultural imprint that Elvis did.
No, it was a mild movie by comparison. And when you're trying to bring general audiences into a movie like that, it really can't be like that. It needs to have the extravagance of an Elvis, right? Like, I think that's going to be the more attainable and the more accessible version of this story.
Yeah. And again, those are 2 movies. Maybe there's a third that I'm also forgetting. But I still think my point stands, because I could sit here and list countless others that play into my argument, right? Whether you swiped, Maria, Lee, The Apprentice, Mank, Better Man.
The percentage is definitely
Maestro.
not in its favor.
Yes.
I'm not ready to say
Bob
it's
Marley
dead.
movie.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I forgot about that.
You know what I mean? Like,
I'm not ready to say it's dead yet. I'm not quite there. I think there's still too many examples, not really too many, but there are enough examples to suggest that this could still course correct itself. Like, I think it's potential that could potentially happen.
I just kind of look at it this way, and again, apologies to those that do not follow sports, but that's just where my brain goes. But when you're looking at something like superhero movies, for example, or other types, horror in recent years especially, it feels like the batting average for those movies is far higher. And superhero movies, like, those can also be quite hit or miss these days. But what, 40% maybe with superhero movies? I don't have these. No, I'm just gauging off general.
You're just going off memory, instinct.
Memory here, and some of the financial successes that we've seen in recent years. Horror has done very well over the last couple of years. So the batting average for that genre is quite high, despite the fact that we get a ton of horror movies each and every year. It feels like the batting average for the biopic is under 10%. It feels like it's really, really low. You have a few sure, call it home runs with Elvis and A Complete Unknown and Oppenheimer. We'll include that as well. Okay, you have a few home runs, but aside from that, you have a few singles here and there, maybe a double. And again, a lot of this will depend on personal taste. It's a bit debatable.
Yeah.
But it's like the batting average generally is really low. Like the strikeout rate, especially, I feel like is higher for this than any other type of movie.
I'm going to say something that might actually make it seem like that batting average is even lower than you're saying. Because the one movie we keep pointing to as evidence that this genre could still be great is Oppenheimer. Should we really be considering that? Because that movie's box office success and the audience success around that was not really because of the fact it was a biopic. Like, that was not even secondary. Like, that was way down the line as far as why people were interested in that movie. I mean, now, Elvis, like, people went to see that because it was an Elvis movie. Like, people went to it for that reason. People didn't go see Oppenheimer because it was about J. Robert Oppenheimer. So there's a pretty big asterisk when it comes to that example.
And that's what makes that film really interesting, because if you polled people on the street, 9 out of 10 people probably don't even know who Robert Oppenheimer even is or what he did.
That's a sad thought.
Which is crazy. And that's, of course, the irony of that film in a lot of ways, and probably why Nolan was interested in telling that story.
Yeah.
But yes, most people went to see that because it was Nolan, and then most people went to see that film because it was tied to Barbenheimer.
Yeah.
So yeah, the subject matter was not at all why people went to see that film.
Yeah.
Even if Barbenheimer never existed, it still would have done well because of the Nolan factor, to your point.
Oh, and the event factor of it. Like, people went to see that movie for the event.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm removing the event.
Well, no,
I'm removing.
No, I'm not talking about the event of Barbenheimer. I'm talking about the fact that Nolan just makes event films, regardless of what it is.
Yes. Yeah. People would have went for Nolan. I agree. But yeah, that's what makes that one interesting. It doesn't really fit the mold of what we're really talking about here. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at a long list here of biopics that came out in the 2020s. I see a lot of strikeouts. I see a lot of strikeouts. Again, we can debate the singles and doubles here, but man, a lot of misses. A lot of misses, more so than any other type of movie we get each year. But again, what's fascinating is that Hollywood still churns these out like hotcakes. Like they're nothing. They're easy to make. And they're just hoping that they get lucky with a home run, which is wild when the batting average is that low.
And sadly, the ones that are more interesting are the ones that get relegated to some streaming service. This isn't really a biopic, but I really loved Regina King's One Night in Miami, which is
I like that too.
Kind of a biopic, but also kind of not. It's more of a situation involving real life people, I guess.
Yeah.
But that one, didn't that just get relegated to Amazon Prime or something like that, and barely had any marketing?
Like that, yeah.
Yeah. Like, that's unfortunate, and that was one of the more interesting examples.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like there are some good films here. And like, I don't want to completely dismiss the biopic at wholesale. You know, because again, I think there are some interesting movies here, even if they're not home runs. And this gets a little bit lost, but it's been thankfully in the conversation over the last few weeks on film Twitter. It's okay to have a single. It's okay to have a double. Like a good 3-star movie, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with a 3 and a 3.5 star movie.
Yeah. We might just be getting to a point where the biopic genre becomes more of a niche thing than it is a box office thing. Whatever happens with Michael will probably set the stage for the future of this genre. But honestly, I think it becoming just a purely niche thing, a small subset of movie, that could actually be good for it. Like it might need that, honestly, as a way to It's kind of like how my lovely Penn State Nittany Lions are going through a state of flux right now. They need to take a pause, right? They need to revamp their program a little bit. So they can't have as many wins as we used to see, or even that they were predicted to have this season. That could be the music biopic for a few years as they rebuild.
Yeah, for sure. Before we move on, I do want to note a few that came to mind that I would consider to be home runs, or at least big wins.
Okay.
One is Killers of the Flower Moon.
Oh yeah.
But that's less a biopic. That's more of a movie based on true events, and that might be a little bit different.
I would say
it's
the
a little
Irishman.
bit of both.
The Irishman is probably more biopic.
The Irishman, yeah. But you could also call that fantastical, because we don't know, like, the source material there has been debated for years.
But you can also call it a movie directed by Martin Scorsese, so of course it's going to be good.
Yeah, so that, which kind of plays into the Nolan Oppenheimer thing.
Exactly.
There. Yeah. Another one that's, again, something like The Fabelmans. We know that that's true. It's a biopic, but it takes these fascinating freedoms as well.
It's fictional nonfiction.
Yes. So, but if you want to call that a biopic, that's fine. I can understand that, and that would be a huge win. Mm-hmm. The other one, and I don't know what its box office numbers are, but I would say, to my point earlier, this is a counter argument to the idea that, a lot of these films people don't rally behind. And I still think that's true when you look at it from a bird's eye view.
Sure.
But one where people did come together, aside from those two, film Twitter came together for The Fabelmans and Killers. The Iron Claw. People came together for that one.
That was a good movie.
Yeah. That was a good one. So credit to where it's due.
Okay. That movie had a budget of $15 million and apparently made 45.
Okay.
The Iron Claw.
With marketing, that might be a loss still. I don't know.
I don't know. What's the general gauge? 2.5 to 3 times?
Something like that.
$15 million budget, $45 million is exactly 3 times that amount. So I would say that's probably around the break-even point, maybe a little bit past it.
Okay. But even still, I guess that does play into the argument in the sense that people didn't go see that movie.
It didn't. You're right.
It wasn't a huge box office sensation. So it still matters from that perspective. But once it came out and people saw it, people rallied.
That was when the people found after the fact.
Yeah. So we might just live in a day and age where the box office it's important, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And it's once it becomes available digitally, that's where people come around. And that's the K-pop Demon Hunter story. That's the narrative there as well.
Sure.
Is that $1 billion movie if it goes to theaters first? Probably not. Maybe not.
Yeah. That's a good point.
It might get word of mouth. The music is awesome. You got to go see this movie. It's really great. It's going to surprise you. It still might have a slow burn to $1 billion. That's possible. But
I could see that maybe having like an Elemental like run.
Immediate cultural sensation. So more people are just the culture tends to follow the digital release, I guess is what I'm saying, most of the time now.
Yeah, especially for a family movie like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know, just something to keep in mind. I know
Interesting times. Interesting times. I know.
I didn't really mean for the conversation to go that long.
Hey, you threw out a really compelling topic.
Yeah, it was compelling. I agree. All right, real quick before we get to the top 5, we don't have to spend a lot of time here. Toy Story 5.
Speaking of animated movies.
Is Toy Story dead? Let's begin the conversation.
It's dead to me.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, okay, look, just in full transparency, because I know this franchise, it's going to have people in their feels, and understandably so. Look, I'm on the wagon, and I think Brennan is as well, that the first 3 films of that franchise are masterful. Incredible.
One of the best trilogies.
One of the best trilogies. I think where you and I might deviate from a lot of people, but also I question how alone we are in this. I do feel like we are not alone, in that Toy Story 4, I don't know how much value that adds to this franchise, but it does
That
well financially.
of course
it got
it does.
okay reviews.
I mean,
So of course they're going to do a Toy Story 5.
I mean, that movie got like, I think I was looking at the Toy Story franchise as far as its Metacritic aggregated scores were. Toy Story 4 got a solid 84 on Metacritic. Like, that's a very high grade based on like 50 or 60 reviews that it got. At least that suggests some pretty, favorable word of mouth. But
And it was $1 billion movie. Let's not forget. So
yeah,
it
Toy
was
Story
a huge success. So despite how you and I feel, you and I we're not champions of Toy Story 4.
Yeah, I didn't hate it at the time, but honestly, that movie gets worse for me the more I think about it.
Same. Like, and it's one of those movies where I don't think that it's terrible in a vacuum, especially. I think it's fine. The problem is I can't separate it from the rest of the franchise. I can't just look at it in a vacuum. And when I look at it within the context of that franchise as the fourth movie, I find it so remarkably redundant. There is nothing new in that film from a narrative perspective or a thematic perspective, an emotional perspective. It is the entire trilogy regurgitated into one film.
I think it's trying to go for something new with regard to the arc of Woody, but when I gave that movie a second watch, I actually think it feels kind of out of character for him, given the events of that movie and how quickly it tries to get to that point. Which is, I know we're going to talk about the trailer for Toy Story 5 in just a moment, but I will say, given what we see in that trailer for a brief moment, if this movie is retconning parts of Toy Story 4, that kind of has me excited. I'll at least give them some respect there.
Yeah, it would be interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like Forky enough as a new character. Like, he was really fun. That was great.
Me too.
But outside of Forky, I just found myself bored to tears with that movie. It just doesn't do anything new or interesting. It just regurgitates a lot of what the franchise has already done.
It also had, keep going.
I was just going to say, like, when I say that it's not doing anything new, I understand that literally in terms of plot beats and some of the arcs, it is navigating new waters in a sense, but fundamentally, especially from a thematic perspective, it's everything we've seen before.
Yeah, there are two things about Toy Story 4 that I want to highlight. There's one thing that I think is maybe the worst thing that I've ever seen in a Pixar movie, and then there's another thing that I think is actually one of the best things that a Toy Story film has ever given us. So the worst thing is whatever they're dubbing as inner voice Buzz, whatever they do to Buzz Lightyear in that movie is the worst thing a Pixar film has ever given us. It's such a not a regurgitation, it's a regression of that character to the point that it's not even the same character anymore. It makes no sense whatsoever for him to be a bumbling idiot in that movie. That said, I do love the scene in Toy Story 4 where the toys are playing the role of the GPS for that RV, and they're actually speaking to the parents. The way it kind of breaks the rules a little bit. That's actually pretty clever. Like the way it plays with the rules of what the toy human relationship is kind of interesting, and I wish the movie went more into that, but it doesn't. It has less interesting things on its mind.
Yeah, and I think the Duke Kaboom sequence is really funny.
He's a good character.
I really like.
Combat Carl is another one of my favorites.
Yeah, like there are elements, again, in a vacuum that make it enjoyable enough. But as a whole, there's nothing all that compelling for me. It's just not for me. I'm glad it worked for everybody else. Not my thing. So I'm not looking forward to Toy Story 5 unless they bring something new into it. But I guess that brings us to the teaser where it feels like Toy Story is now at a crossroads with the digital age, as they now have to compete with iPads and I know that story all too well.
Honestly, it's a good story. That makes sense for this world. I have nothing against that particular conflict that the toys have to go up against. In fact, it's welcomed for a series like Toy Story. But I still have a lot of the same doubts given my history with Toy Story 4 and even your history with Toy Story 4. I just don't trust the Disney machine operating with this franchise. And something we've talked about before, bringing on Andrew Stanton to make this movie feels like a very safe pick. And that's the thing that scares me the most. This feels very much like an obligatory movie to try to chase yet another $1 billion movie. That's what it feels like Disney is trying to do here. And they're trying to take it, they're trying to play it safe. I also have no idea why Woody's even in this. That's maybe where the retconning seems to be. Somehow he's just back. And if that's the explanation, that's actually kind of hilarious. I would kind of welcome that. And they never reference the events of Toy Story 4 ever again.
Yeah, that's also interesting. I mean, it's a teaser trailer, so it's not going to tell us anything in a little teaser, but
I just like to assume that maybe they're retconning Toy Story 4, and I think that's funny.
Yeah, and look, if Toy Story 5 ends up being a fascinating sequel and it answers a lot of the questions that we had going into Toy Story 4, and then ultimately retcons Toy Story 4 to become the actual fourth movie in that franchise, I can get on board with that. Absolutely.
That's going to be really interesting when you have to recommend the Toy Story movies to someone who's never seen them. And you say, yeah, it's a really good 4-parter. It's a really great quadrilogy. Here's Toy Story, Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3, and Toy Story 5. Here you go.
Yeah. You just have to skip 4. Don't even bother. Yeah. I mean, I would be okay with that. Because even when Toy Story 4 came out, it was, look, I had a lot of reservations. We talked about it then. But even at the time in 2019, my stance was if they have an interesting idea, if they execute on it and it makes sense, then I will be completely open-minded for it.
Yeah.
But
that's not what they did.
That's not at all what happened. Not at all what happened.
Yeah.
A little bit of what we talked about with Tron Ares earlier in the year. I was open-minded for that, despite it not being a sequel to Legacy. And in hindsight, it very much should have just been a sequel to Legacy because they had no new ideas. And that film was awful. And I felt a little bit, the same with Toy Story 4 for the reasons we've already talked about.
Yeah.
I hope that 5 has some fascinating ideas. Bringing in an iPad as the antagonist to that film could be interesting. It's an idea that it has piqued my interest. I'll just say
yeah,
that.
It's a clever idea. I just hope they do something good with it.
Yes. So we shall see. I am curious. And the thing is, it's I don't think that's pandering.
No, I think that's natural.
My 3-year-old balances that out every single night. He has his iPad moments, but he also loves to play with his toys. It's a constant teetering.
That's at least
so.
Good.
If his toys were alive and a Toy Story sense, absolutely no doubt the iPad is having an all-out battle as we speak. Since I'm in here. And they're all alone now. They're all having an all-out war right now, 100%. So there's certainly merit to the idea.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
Curious.
I agree. This is the new Toy Story 4, the actual Toy Story 4, aka Toy Story 5.
Exactly. All right, Brendan, let's talk about The Naked Gun.
Comedies are back.
I still maintain is one of my favorite surprises of the entire year.
Oh, it's one of the best movies of the year. Yes. Full stop. It's one of my favorites, at least.
Yeah, I think you might be right about that. It is really, really funny. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I do like the Police Squad movies and the Naked Gun movies, but I don't know. There's something about like how many legacy sequels have we seen that have been uninspired, that have just been nostalgia bait, and have been disappointing. I feel like we've seen many of those.
Yeah,
and
this is not one of them.
I think that was always lingering in the back of my mind with The Naked Gun, and why I wasn't exactly sure. But man, I should have never have doubted.
It is so in spirit of the other movies. It follows the same blueprint perfectly, while still feeling very contemporary. I think it does straddle that line quite well.
Yeah, and Liam Neeson is impeccable casting. He was great. He was so good.
For the same reasons why Leslie Nielsen was such great casting back in the day.
Oh, for sure. Here in about we'll say about a month and a half from now, we're going to be doing our top 5 scenes of the year. I think The Naked Gun is in the running. It's in the running for that top 5.
Quite a few gags you can pick that qualify.
Oh, very, very much so. I love this. Anyway, all of that to say, we have 5 Blu-rays to give away. The film is, of course, out digitally. It is now out on 4K and Blu-ray. And we have 5 of them to give away, 5 Blu-rays to give away. If you want one of these Blu-rays, you want a physical copy, you're going to have to fight Brennan and I, because I might just keep all 5. No, I'm just kidding. Can't do that. But we do have 5 to give away. So if you want one, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram at InSession Film, and you will see a tweet there, a post with instructions on how you can win one of these Blu-rays. We just gave away 5 Blu-rays for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. And now we are here to do the same for The Naked Gun. So if you want one of these Blu-rays, at InSession Film on Twitter, at InSession Film on Instagram, follow us. Look out for our post. Like, repost, all that fun jazz, and you will be automatically entered. We pick them at random. So make sure that you're following, because if you win and I have no way of getting a hold of you and getting your address, that's a problem. So you make sure that you follow us, so that way if you win, I can get a hold of you. I also have to note, I apologize in advance, this contest is for U.S. residents only. We cannot ship out overseas. However, I will say, if you're in Canada, I can make it happen. I can make it happen. Canadians, we love you.
We have nothing against Canada. We'll make it happen for them.
We can make it happen for you.
We love Saskatoon.
Anywhere else, I apologize. That's just the way the rules are set up.
Yeah.
So Canadians, Americans, you're all in this. So The Naked Gun, 5 Blu-rays. Be sure to follow us. And we thank The Naked Gun for their support. All right, Brennan, this time of year, it is getting colder in the northern states. Not so much here in Florida, although today, as we are recording this, it got down to a brisk 45 degrees.
Oh, wow.
People lost their minds.
Did people, did they lock down? Did the state shut down?
Well, they did, but it was because it was Veterans Day, so it was just a massive coincidence.
So it was just good timing, I guess. Okay.
Just good timing that everyone was at home anyway.
Yeah, it was.
Otherwise,
it was cold here, up in Pennsylvania, just outside Philly. I think the temperature was not too far off from yours, actually. I think it was near the 30s, but there was a hell of a breeze we had to contend with today that made it feel like it was 20. That's where the wind chill was. So honestly, when I had to step outside, I had to have a warm coffee in hand.
You got to have a warm coffee. That's exactly where I wanted to go with this. As winter sets in and it gets colder, you need a warm cup of coffee that not only makes you feel great and warms you up, but it gives you that Christmas vibe. And that's why we love Coffee Cult, because they have great coffees, but especially that holiday blend. It is festive joy in a mug. It is Christmas in a coffee mug. It is absolutely incredible. You got to check out the holiday blend. No joke, this is all I drink this time of year. It is by far one of my favorite coffees. It is excellent. Definitely encourage you to check it out. But they have other blends. They got great single origin coffees. We are talking about high-end premium gourmet coffee. This is not your store-bought coffee. This is not the coffee you get at the Green Circle place. It is not that at all. We are talking about high-end gourmet coffee. And you can really, truly taste the difference.
Absolutely.
I promise you, you got to check it out. Use our code at checkout. Use our code ISF25. Again, that code is ISF25. Coffeecult.com, coffee with a K, cult with a K. Coffeecult.com. That code is ISF25. I promise you, you won't regret it.
So good.
And we thank Coffee Cult for their support. Okay, with all of that said, let's move on to our top 5 this week. We're going to be talking about movies about movies. And I love these movies. I love when movies are about movies in filmmaking.
Yeah.
And showing us how they come together. And as we noted up at the top, this is a really rich category. A lot of phenomenal movies fall under this umbrella.
My honorable mentions might be a list of like 100.
There are a lot. Yeah, I don't know if I'll name all 100, but there are a lot of great honorable mentions here. So I guess before we get into it, as always, did you have any criteria?
You know, when I first started doing research for this, I didn't really have criteria other than it just has to be a movie about movies in some way. It could be about the world of movies, about making movies, maybe about real life cinematic figures or something like that. But given the breadth of this topic and how much that we can talk about, and the fact that we may consider doing a part 2 or even part 17 of this list, I've decided to put a very particular set of rules in place to really limit the films I'm going to talk about, so then I can leave room for other ones in the future.
Okay.
And I've decided to try to tie this stylistically and subject-wise as best I could to something like Richard Linklater's Nouvelle Vague, because that is very much a historical recreation of a movie, right?
Yeah.
So sadly, there are not many movies about movies that I can think of that are about like real life things, but I'm trying to actually limit movies about movies for my top 5 to be as close to that as possible, dealing with some type of real or historical thing as it relates to movies about movies. They could still be fictional stories, but they're largely inspired by real life events. So I'm choosing to only focus on those types of movies for this list, because then it allows me to talk about some other great ones when we do this list again. And I talk about maybe just more generalized fictional movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to tie this strictly to the new Linklater film to keep to the theme, and also to maybe add some variety in case your criteria is a little bit different from that.
Yeah. I honestly didn't have too much criteria here, mostly because this was such a rich topic. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how I wanted to limit this. And because so many of these movies have never really made a top 5 list for me, I decided to be pretty open-ended with it. There were a couple of films that I left off intentionally just because they have made recent top 5s. And that was about it. That was really the only caveat that I had here, even though some of these may be on a truer list, although this top 5 for me isn't too far off from a true list.
Okay.
But there were a few that I had in my top 5 initially. I looked at it and I was like, I think I actually had this on a top 5 recently, so I moved it out.
Okay.
That was it. That was really the only caveats that I had here. Outside of that, I just went with 5 films that I haven't really had on a list before. There is one exception to that rule, but I wanted to keep it on the list for reasons I'll talk about later.
Okay, then
Outside
this should be
that, these are fresh films that have never made a list for me.
Okay,
At least,
this should be fun.
I think. But as we've already established, my memory isn't always the best.
No, I'm looking at my list now. At least 1 or 2 of these have never made a top 5 for me. The others may have, or at the very least, we've certainly talked about it on the podcast in some way.
Yeah. On my list, we have done reviews, I think, for all 5 in some fashion in the past.
That is interesting.
So we have talked about them, but not in this capacity, not in a top 5 capacity. They will
That's
be
interesting.
fresh top 5 selections.
Okay. Okay.
So that's separate. I consider that separate. So that's my excuse making here for keeping this list the way that it is.
Okay, this will be interesting. I wonder if we have any crossover, because since I am looking at more of the historical angle here, we may have some very different films. So I guess my list really isn't a true top 5, just given that criteria. But that'll make this really interesting.
Okay. All right. Let's dig in. I'm excited. What do you got at number 5?
Number 5, I won't spend too much time on. I think if there's any film on my list that's also in your list, it might be this one. I'm going to go with The Fabelmans from a number 5.
Okay.
Yep, Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans, a fictional story, but also not at all. If anything, it's basically his own story where other people basically serve as stand-ins for his own life. The Fabelmans specifically taking the place of the Spielbergs.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting about this movie, and this is something we've talked about a lot when we reviewed it, when it was such a big hit, when it came out back in 2022, was that the year it came out, or 2023?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I can't remember any of these years anymore.
I know.
But I as much as Spielberg has been vocal about how his parents' divorce influenced his movies in some way, directly or indirectly, I think it's pretty interesting to see a movie that basically features an artist, a director specifically, kind of reckoning with whether he was complicit in his family falling apart. That maybe he actually, maybe not necessarily had something to do with it, but he chose to exploit it because he knew it would make good drama and that it would influence him to become a better filmmaker. Like, that's a very bold and daring notion. That is very brave to openly admit that maybe he had something to do with the deterioration of his parents' marriage to fuel his art, and his art was great because of it. So in true Spielberg fashion, he makes a very sentimental movie that's also kind of prickly at the same time. This is very reminiscent of the Spielberg from the early 2000s, which we love. And we've talked about him a lot, that specific era of Spielberg quite a bit. And I think this is a great extension of that prickliness that he was tapping into at that time. It's a very bold movie. And I think as a movie about movies and an artist reckoning with how their family was affected by the creation of that art, I think it's a very interesting one.
The Fabelmans is my number 2 on this list. So I'll just go ahead and talk about it.
Wow.
Yep.
That's high.
This is
so I was
really high
right
for me.
that this would be on your list.
Yep. You were absolutely right.
You didn't say anything. I thought you were just going to come in and say, yep, you're right.
I just wanted to let you have the floor before I come in to say, yeah, no, you're absolutely 100% correct. It is my number 2. I'm really high on this movie. I think it is by far one of the best movies about movies, not just because it's great on its own terms, and I do think it's one of the very best movies we've seen so far this decade. But what's great about art and movie making is how it can be catharsis for the artist. And that's what that film is all about, as you were just talking about there. It is art as a coping mechanism. And I think what's most compelling about Sammy, the Steven Spielberg character, if you will, he uses art to help him process what's happening with his family. And, and it's something that he couldn't articulate in any other way, right? Life always finds a way to throw us these curveballs. And oftentimes we can't understand the why these things are happening. Why are his parents separating? Why is his family falling apart? He had no answers to those questions. He had no control over it. What he does have control over, though, is his art. And I think that's what Spielberg is suggesting the most with that film, is that art is most necessary when we don't have the answers. And how that comes about in the film is gorgeous. It is poignant. It is funny. It is everything that we love about Spielberg. It is incredibly well crafted and just so deeply personal. And I love it. I absolutely love that connection of movie making as a coping mechanism. So as a movie about movies and why it's important, and this is what makes his movie so special, that being the nucleus, being the ethos. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love it.
Here Spielberg is, late in his career, making a movie that's arguably a top 10 for him.
Yeah.
I think it's in his top 10 best movies.
Oh, yeah. I think it's easily in his top 10.
Yeah.
I think it's probably in his top 5. I know that's recency bias, but I think I'm that high on it.
I don't know if I'm ready to say that just yet, but I think in time, some people will be. I think quite a few people will be.
I think I'm there. If I'm not, I'm awfully close.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Absolutely love that movie. So that's my number 2. So
Okay.
I don't know where you want to go from here.
Go to your number 5. Yeah,
my
you
number
can go
5?
to your number
Okay.
5. Yeah.
All right, so my number 5, this is a film that came out in 2013. So we did do a review of this, but it was pre-Brendan. So this was a conversation I probably had with Nate Parsons. I did not go to the archive to look this up, and I really don't encourage people to. It's probably not great. But we did talk about it. We did talk about it. My number 5, I'm very, very excited to talk about Sarah Polley's Stories We Tell.
Okay.
From 2013.
That's an inspired pick. That's a very inspired pick.
This is one of my favorite films of that year. I think it sits at number 11 on my top 20 for that year. I really love it. It's one of my favorite documentaries of the 2010s. And what's great about this film, this documentary, is that it begins like this standard family documentary as Polley interviews her relatives to uncover the truth about her late mother, Diane, who unfortunately had passed away. But as the film unfolds, it morphs into something more profound as it becomes this exploration of memory and myth and authorship, where we get these conflicting versions of the same events. And Sarah Polley doesn't care to provide any answers. It's wonderfully ambiguous in that regard. And I'm going to have to get into some spoilers here for the film to articulate why it fits this list, because there's this reveal halfway through the film that the archival home movies that we had been watching, and that's primarily the bulk. There's some talking head, if I'm not mistaken, but mostly it's this archival home movie footage that we had been watching through most of the movie. And then we come to find out those are actually recreations shot on Super 8 film with actors. And so we're jolted into realizing that we've been complicit in the illusion. And cinema acting as memory for Sarah Polley in this incredible way. So it becomes this meta exercise in humanity and ultimately asking the question of why we tell ourselves stories and how that becomes this tool for self-discovery and coping with these hardships in our lives. But stories being the fundamental healer that brings people together. So it's quite complementary in a way to the Fabelmans. In a lot of ways, Stories We Tell is Sarah Polley's Fabelmans. She just does it through this documentary-esque style. But it becomes a movie about movies, given that, again, that reveal of she is manufacturing these memories in a way that we didn't know until she gives us that reveal. But the recreation of it becomes this part of the healing process for her. And it's fascinating, utterly fascinating. And again, like I said, one of my favorite docs of the 2010s. I deeply love it.
I need to give this one a second go. The first time I saw it, I definitely really liked it, but I had some reservations about the final 20 minutes, feeling like it kind of spells some of those themes out a little bit too literally. But I do think you make a great point that perhaps that is its intention for that pulling of the rug, if you will, to really shift that perspective and make us complicit in what we were actually viewing and how we were actually twisting it for our own perspectives in a way. I'll definitely need to give the film another go, but it is a very good film. And I think it definitely does fit this list in a very personal way. I like that we have a documentary represented here in some way. And given the fact that I'm talking about, for my list, more historical representations of movies about movies, I too have a documentary on my list. It's actually my number 4. So this is a nice transition point. I'm going back to the year 1991 for maybe one of the most notorious movies about movies, documentaries specifically, Hearts of Darkness, A Filmmaker's Apocalypse.
Okay, yeah.
I feel like we need to at least acknowledge this one. This is directed by Fax Baer, Eleanor Coppola, and George Hickenlooper, I believe their names are. But this, of course, is the tale showcasing the making of Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now and how that almost destroyed his career. For some people, it probably did destroy his career. I think what's interesting about this is, when we talk about movies, I feel like more often than not, these movies feel kind of optimistic. They kind of feel a bit celebratory. We don't often see a movie that highlights just how painful and devastating it is to sometimes make a movie, especially one with this kind of grand scale, Apocalypse Now specifically, and how that can essentially ruin a filmmaker's life. What's so interesting about this movie too, for me, is not just the journey it takes you on, which is absolutely riveting, but it has also become kind of synonymous with Francis Ford Coppola himself as someone that has now become known as a director who almost purposely allows himself to go broke just to fund whatever his new vanity project is going to be. In a way, this movie became kind of a thesis for how we associate Francis Ford Coppola nowadays, what we think of him. We think of how he got a movie like Megalopolis made, and now he's apparently broke, selling his possessions just to make his money back for how much he lost on that movie.
Which, by the way, Megadoc, which is a movie about the making of Megalopolis that came out earlier this year, is worth seeing. It's not quite as harrowing or provocative as this one is, but still worth your time.
Well,
very good.
Sounds like a great companion then. And once again, kind of works as yet another extension into the ethos of Francis Ford Coppola and how he basically became a director that would do one vanity project, lose a bunch of money, and then work as a director for hire for a bit just to make more money to do whatever his next vanity project is. I kind of love that about him. And in a way, Hearts of Darkness kind of indirectly suggests that is now the man. And I find that interesting. And I think as a movie about a director's mindset, I think it's a very effective one.
Yeah, this is a great honorable mention. Absolutely on my list. And I think it's essential for all those reasons. I mean, you're talking about a film that shows us not only just this incredibly raw and vulnerable humanity with the disaster that was the making of that film, but just to see Francis Ford Coppola completely unravel while utterly convinced that he was making the worst movie of all time. And then there's the great irony that it's actually one of the best movies of all time. So,
I mean, it is my favorite Francis Ford Coppola film.
It's a stunning. Yeah, this is a great film that I deeply love. It's a good honorable mention for me. Absolutely. Do love that. Okay. My number 4, and I noted earlier that none of these films have made a top 5 except for one. This isn't the one, but it wouldn't surprise me if I lied and that this film has been on a top 5. I just don't recall.
Okay.
I don't think that it's made a list, but it very much is going to make my list here. For my number 4, I'm going with Spike Jonze's adaptation.
It's my number 3.
All right. Perfect. What can you say?
I figured this would also be on your list.
Yeah. Yeah. This one very much came to mind for me as well. I did end up swapping this out with another film that I had there originally, but the film I swapped it out for, I do know has been on a top 5 adaptation, at least as far as I can remember. Again, has never been on a top 5, but we have talked about it here on the show. Obviously, it was a part of our 2002 retrospective.
2002. That's correct.
2002. That was a film that made both of our top 5. So we have talked about this film to some capacity. So I don't know how much we really have to go into it here. But as far as a movie about movies, and more specifically, the writing process and the psychology behind the characters that we see here, and Nicolas Cage is brilliant in both of these performances. But that dynamic between Charlie and Donald is the definition of captivating, but it's also deeply emotional as well. And you couple that with the meta component of Kaufman's own psychology, and you have the recipe for one of the most phenomenal movies of the 2000s, especially when you're talking about movies and the creative process and the deep volatility that comes with how you come up with the art. I just absolutely love how this film demonstrates that, and it's great. It is a masterpiece.
Yeah, we get a lot of movies about movies, but I don't think we get many movies about screenwriting specifically. We get a lot of movies about authors and writers, but maybe not always screenwriters. I mean,
Mank?
there's Mank.
You got that? You got Mank? Yeah.
Mank. Good honorable mention of mine. I'll simply say that now.
Same.
I guess Barton Fink, I guess, is another one.
Yeah, that's no.
Yeah, but most of these aren't necessarily about screenwriters. It's kind of it's kind of a forgotten art, which is part of what makes adaptation such an effective movie, because that is one of the big reasons why Charlie Kaufman feels so insecure. This is basically about the insecurities of the writing process from the writer's point of view, and I think it's even more effective because of those meta components you were talking about. It's an artist himself admitting to his own insecurities and making a movie about that when he should have been adapting some other book. It's like, I love that. I love that about it. And the fact that it chooses to tackle an art that sometimes feels a little lost in the conversation. I love that for this movie. I really do. It's great for all those reasons you talked about. And it's my number 3.
Deeply, deeply love that. Okay, so then to my number 3, and I don't have to spend a lot of time here. This is the one movie that has been on a top 5 for me before. However, given that this is the first time we've done this topic here for our top 5 anyway, I feel like I needed to have it here because this is one of those films that makes you fall in love with movies, that makes you fall in love with the art form. That is Singing in the Rain.
Okay. Yeah.
And
that's fair.
I watched this somewhat recently in the last couple of years. Also, have seen this on Stingray. They featured Singing in the Rain as well. So the clip's vivid in my mind. They don't forget the classics either. Z for Zachariah, yes, also Singing in the Rain.
So it's clearly run. Channel. It's a channel run by cinephiles.
100%. 100%. Yes. And I want to meet those people. But Singing in the Rain, you almost forget how incredibly vivid that film is. It is gorgeous. Just in terms of its visuals, its composition, it is engrossing to watch as in terms of its craft, as a work of art. Like,
so ahead of its time.
Forget the music for a moment. That's certainly a big element when it comes to Singing in the Rain. You turn off the sound and you won't be able to look away. It is utter perfection in terms of the coloration of that film, the composition, the way the actors act with the set design, especially within the musical numbers and how those are choreographed. It is, again, I know this film has been talked to death, but when we're talking about movies and we're talking about how characters are being framed within the set design to showcase the magic of the movies. That whole film is about the magic of cinema, how all of this is crafted, how an actor can interact with the set in relation to the camera to give us a visual that will blow your effing mind. And holy Lord, does that film do it. And then you couple that with the iconic music of that film as well, and it is spellbinding. It is one of those movies where, anytime you get a scene of a character, such as The Fabelmans, for example, where young Sammy is just glued to the screen and he can't look away. You look at it in awe and wonder. And
it's like, I can relate to that. I can relate to that.
I can absolutely relate to that. That is Singing in the Rain. And it's, I had to bring it up here because I feel like it's one of those classics that you just like with Citizen Kane. It's like, oh yeah, we, of course, Singing in the Rain. Oh, of course, Citizen Kane. Like, yeah, we don't have to talk about it. We all know it's great. No, I have to hammer the point home. Like, this film is awe-inducing. It is utterly, utterly incredible how this film is crafted and how it fits this mold. Again, a movie about movies that makes you fall in love with the movies.
Well, yeah.
It is transcendent in that regard, and why I wanted to have it on this list. Like, it really is one of the best films of all time. And my number 3 here for those reasons.
It's a movie that doesn't just talk the talk; it also walks the walk. It's a movie about the greatness of movies. And sings the sings. Well put. Well put. But no, you're absolutely right. It's a movie that is about the grandness and the spectacle of great movies. And in order to achieve that, the movie itself has to also be that thing. It has to participate in the same thing that it's talking about. And it very much does. I absolutely agree. It's not on my list primarily just due to criteria reasons. But I do agree. It's an excellent, excellent movie.
Yeah. Deeply, deeply love it. Also very funny and charming.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Among many, many things.
Favorite number in the movie for me is, I still love Make 'Em Laugh.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Talk about choreography. I mean, that is as good as it gets.
Oh my gosh. It's stunning. And that's what I mean. Like, you watch that and you're like, how on earth did they pull this off? Like, it is. And it's crazy because so much of that film is in frame. Like, it's a film that isn't reliant on heavy editing or close up. Like, you get some of that for sure, but most of that film is medium shot or complete wide shot. It's all in frame.
Do you know why I think that is? I think it mostly comes down to performers themselves and maybe not having the same ability as someone like a Gene Kelly. Because that was just a very different and common art form and very different type of performance back in the day. There was more of a through line that you could tie between theatrical acting and film acting. And nowadays that line has become much longer and more separated. And that's not to say actors these days can't do what they do in a movie like this, but it's a very different skill that I felt like was more commonly known back in the day. I think that's certainly part of it.
I agree. Which is why they were able to capture it all in camera the way they do. Yeah. And there are some films that are able to get away with that today. And I feel like a lot of actors all are multi-talented and can certainly pull that off. But for whatever reason, a lot of movies, a lot of musicals have been reliant on editing doing the heavy lifting there and not the actor. But there is something really powerful about letting the actor and the set design and the choreography carry the weight of it and not the editing.
Yeah.
And
it's more immersive in that way.
Quintessential in that. Yeah.
I agree.
Good stuff. All right. I've already talked about my number 2. So your number 2.
My number 2. Hugo, Martin Scorsese's Hugo is
Oh
my number
man,
2.
yeah, this is a heavy honorable mention for me. I
Yeah.
love this.
This one definitely is one I had to consider given my criteria by looking at some tie to history in some way. And I do recognize that Hugo is a fictional tale. It's based on a novel by Brian Selznick called The Invention of Hugo Cabret. But I love it as a version of revisionist history. It's a tale of a young boy in Paris and how an object from his dead father essentially led to the rediscovery of legendary filmmaker Georges Méliès. Obviously, this is not the true story of how Méliès's films were preserved and how they became ingrained in film history, right? But I love that we have a movie that revises that history from the perspective of a child. We often talk about this as film lovers and cinephiles, how cool it would be to introduce young minds to classic cinema. And here's a movie that is tailor-made for children to do that very thing. I feel like I would have loved to have seen more success stories from this movie of how it was maybe able to introduce classic films like A Trip to the Moon to younger audiences. And maybe those success stories are out there. I just haven't really heard many of them. But I think this movie is good enough and accessible enough to do that very thing. And I think it's a very charming film on its own terms, regardless of the movie about movie criteria here. But I do think as a movie about movies from the perspective of a child, I love that angle. I think it's a great angle and a great educational piece. And that's why I had to talk about it here.
No, I deeply, deeply love this movie. I know that some people look at it as lesser Scorsese, but I certainly don't. I think it's
bull crap.
among
This is
his
top
best work.
10. This is top 10 Scorsese.
I think it's really great. And I think what's really fun, especially in context of this conversation and where it's gone already, is that it almost feels as if Scorsese saw the turn that Spielberg had in the 2000s and how he became a very different filmmaker, almost garnered a whole new identity.
Yeah.
And Hugo was Scorsese's internal reflection of, I think I'm going to become Spielberg for a moment. And like he channels his own Spielberg in a way. I can also do you too, Steven. And
that's a great
proves
point.
a point.
that is actually a great point, because I'm pulling up his Scorsese's filmography specifically in the 2010s, and many of his feature films were very much what Spielberg was doing in the early 2000s. He became kind of a self-reflective filmmaker, kind of looking back on, his life as a filmmaker, what that meant for him, the kind of person that he has become. He kind of criticizes himself along the way with movies like Silence at the same time. Maybe in a way, a movie like The Wolf of Wall Street is also a commentary on Scorsese's own exploitativeness and the vile nature of some of his movies. Like he became very self-reflective in a way that Spielberg was before. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and Hugo is tonally and emotionally more in line of classic Spielberg in a way. It's very different than what we've come to know with Scorsese, but it's not any less in terms of quality. I know some people will argue that, but I think it is absolutely one of his best movies. I just love that he can go in a very different direction and still be as masterful as he's always been. And then, you get to something like Silence later on, some years later, which is him going back to his spiritual roots and doing something masterful in that regard as well. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of movie that he makes. Obviously, he's known for the gangster and crime movies, in terms of his legacy. That's what makes The Irishman one of my favorite movies he's done, because that's him very much grappling with that legacy in these extremely compelling ways. But Hugo is a profound love letter to the art of cinema.
Beautiful
and its
movie.
history.
Yeah.
And I love its innocence. Yeah, it's brilliant. I really love it a lot. It's a great honorable mention for me, for sure.
So now we're at our number ones, aren't we?
Number one. All right, number one. What do you got at number one?
Oh, let's see if we cross over yet again. I wouldn't be surprised if we do. Given the fact that I want to talk about movies that also have some type of historical angle inspired by Linklater's Nouvelle Vague, I felt like I'd pick a film that maybe is the most direct comparison to that idea. So my number one is 1994's Ed Wood from Tim Burton.
Yeah, good stuff. This is an honorable mention for me.
Okay.
This was a movie on my list, and then I swapped it out at the last second.
Oh,
So
interesting.
It was very, very close to
It would have been
making this
interesting
list,
if you
yeah.
kept it on. And again, I don't know if this is my favorite film on my list here, but given my criteria, I feel like it is the best qualifier for this list, and that's why it's my number one. I feel like it's the most literal example of what it means to make a movie about a movie, or in this case, about an artist who made movies, notoriously terrible movies.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes the movie so fascinating. In a way, it almost serves as kind of a recreation, a stylistic recreation of the kinds of movies that Ed Wood would make, those kind of like crappy B movies of the time. But it does so in such a self-reflective way that also taps into that idea of joy and optimism when making a movie. I just love the idea that joy and optimism of what it means to do what you love, it's from the perspective of someone who is actually very terrible at it. I love that idea. In a weird way, this also works as a pretty interesting companion to a documentary from the year 1999 called American Movie, which is also my honorable mentions, which we talked about pretty recently because that was during our 1999 retrospective. But that's, from the perspective of someone who really wants to be an artist, who maybe wasn't really great at it, but you kind of admire the love they have for the craft and the fact that they are still knowledgeable of the craft. They just didn't know how to lead and manage the process. And that can somewhat be said about Ed Wood himself. I think it's a very effective movie in that regard, from the perspective of someone who loved doing something that they just weren't very good at. And I love that idea. I think that idea is so beautiful, and it honestly makes this list so great in the fact that it's why we love movies. Even if you're not good at doing it, we all love it for varying reasons. Like we all have a love to this medium.
Yeah, I think Ed Wood is arguably Tim Burton's best movie, and it features my favorite Depp performance in a Burton film. He is remarkably charming and passionate and gives this remarkable credence to Ed Wood's enthusiasm for film. And what's really great about the movie is that Depp and Burton treat him with dignity and respect. They never point a finger at him or make fun of him, even though, as you eloquently pointed out, he's been known as the worst director of all time.
Yeah.
But the film has reverence for him as a person. And I love that Burton and Depp go out of their way to give him a humanity that is so fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's gorgeous.
That's a great point. It doesn't make fun of him. I mean, it has a little fun with his eccentricities, but the movie doesn't hate it doesn't hate him. It actually admires him.
Very much so. Again, it shows remarkable reference to him as a person. And I love it a lot. Great honorable mention for me. Like I said, was almost on this list for me.
All right. So what is your number one?
My number one was always my number one.
Okay.
It was 2 through 5, 2 through 6, 7. I mean, those kind of changed, flipped out as I noted, but this was always my number one. It is, and maybe always will be. Who knows? But as it stands currently, I think it will always be the definitive film about filmmaking, and that is Federico Fellini's 8.5.
That's I was trying to think of what would be a funny one to put at your number one, but no, that makes a lot of sense.
I love this movie. Of course, it's a story centered around Guido, our main character, who is this neurotic, self-absorbed director who begins a project so grand and expensive that it begins to consume his life entirely, physically and emotionally, straining him from everyone else around him, which is what makes the opening scene of that film and its surrealism incredible, because you have no idea what's going on. No idea. It is so weird and strange.
That kite shot is an all-timer.
It's so good.
How did they pull that off?
I don't know. It's incredible, and that dichotomy is what makes the film as engrossing as it is. Regarding Guido's back and forth psychology, which becomes the nucleus of the movie, because Fellini's direction is always blurring the line between dream and reality, fantasy and memory, enhancing the character's state of haziness. And so it's easy to get lost in what's real and what isn't. And in many ways, that's exactly what Fellini wants. Guido, there's never any clarity for him as to what's real or what is memory, and are these memories reinforcing whatever reality he is experiencing. All of that is at play in this film, and as a result, the film kind of goes in these, well, at least what can feel like disjointed twists and turns, but I do feel like there's a lot of purpose to it. Even if it feels sporadic, it might make the film unpredictable in a lot of ways, but there is purpose to it all. And as it relates to art and making art, and I guess broadly speaking, like how that defines a person, because this is a rumination on failure and inspiration and vanity and life. Like it's Fellini's own creative crisis turned into this self-portrait, and it became an all-timer, became one of the best films ever made. It's also hilarious. It's probably
it's very funny
movie as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So yeah, I deeply love, like, it's a film that is pretentious, but pretentious almost
in the right ways,
a satirical, sarcastic way. Yeah,
it's pretentious by calling attention and making fun of its own pretentiousness.
Yes, exactly. It's very meta in that regard, and I love it.
I almost did consider this for my list. It was between this and The Fabelmans, and honestly, they are kind of similar, in a way, because I guess 8.5 technically is a semi-autobiographical tale for Fellini. I went with The Fabelmans because I felt like it better fit my criteria. But even despite that, I would say 8.5 is probably my number 6, given the way I mean,
the motivation is different, but you are right in the sense that both filmmakers had these experiences where art became the coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Fellini's existential crisis was in relation to the process of making the art. And again, getting too caught up in what's real and what isn't, his own imagination, what inspired him, his failures, his own vanity, where Spielberg's was much more emotional for the reasons we talked about earlier. But they both channel similar ethos in terms of, well, how can I turn this crisis into a coping mechanism? And maybe that's why, like, I didn't really think about it in those terms, but I guess it makes sense that they're my number 1 and number 2 respectively, because I deeply
makes
love
sense.
That. Yeah. I mean, I don't make art. Obviously, I don't make movies, but I watch movies from that perspective a lot of the time, and that's how I engage with art in a lot of ways. You know, something like First Man, for example. Funny enough, given that we talked about biopics earlier, but like, I engage with that film because it did become a bit of a game changer for me. Or same thing with Boyhood, going back to the Linklater of it all. Like, those movies have literally impacted my life. So, like, again, I don't make the art, but I very much engage with it in a similar way. So it's no surprise that those are my number 1.
No, it makes sense. Here. Makes perfect sense.
All right. Well, I mean, we could be here all day, but what other honorable mentions do you want?
I'm just going to round out a top 10
Okay.
Primarily because I want to keep to the theme of my criteria of looking at things that are a bit more historical in a way. And a good chunk of my honorable mentions here, much like the Fablemans, are ones that I guess we can call semi-autobiographical. 8.5 is one of them. That would have been my number 6. Francois Truffaut's Day for Night would have been my number 7. And number 8 would have been Almodovar's Pain and Glory. So like these are not technically true stories, but they also are. They're very reflective of the artist who made them. So in a way, I would say they are true in many ways. So those would be my 6 through 8. Number 9, I think I'd give it to American Movie, the documentary I highlighted earlier. At number 10, just to make things kind of fun and silly, I'm going to say Scream 3.
Okay. That's fun. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Given some of the predictive elements of that movie and what Wes Craven had to go through by kind of casting a version of himself at some point in the movie, and then the whole like indirect Harvey Weinstein joke, there's a lot about that movie that is very predictive of the movie business itself. Yeah. And the fact that that movie was such a troubled production, and they ended up turning the movie itself into a movie about the making of a troubled production of Stab, I think is kind of brilliant. So in a way, it kind of fits this criteria for me. So maybe not the greatest of films, but I think it's a very fun film.
Okay, well, in the spirit of just rounding out the 10, I'll do the same, and then we can leave so many of these for another iteration.
There are so many.
And number 6 for me would be Sunset Boulevard, which is hilarious in hindsight of what we just talked about with the Fablemans and 8.5, because honestly, I love that film for a lot of the same reasons in terms of how meta that is. So Sunset Boulevard very much came to mind for me. Ed Wood, which we already talked about. Mulholland Drive would be my number 8. My number 9 would be The Player. And then my last one here, a bit of a question mark. And the reason I say it's a bit of a question mark is because it centers more around theater. This is it might be more of a movie about theater than about movies. Synecdoche, New York. I didn't know if that qualified, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't really think they ever talk about movie making in that movie.
Yeah, and they might not.
Yeah.
Which is why I put a question mark around it. So if it doesn't qualify, I have a backup here. And it would be my boy Orson Welles. F for Fake would be my number 10.
That's a great pick. I almost decided to go with The Other Side of the Wind,
which is another great one. Yes. Deeply love that documentary. Or film.
It kind of feels like it straddles the line. It's strange, strange beast of a movie.
It's very much, however you want to look at that. But I love that movie as well. So that's my 10. And then obviously I have 60 other films listed here as honorable mentions. So I guess we can save that for round 2. There are a lot of films that qualify.
Part 2 incoming.
All right. Well, if you agree or disagree with any of our picks here, you can leave a comment below. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. You can always email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com. All right. Reviews this week. We have at least 2, maybe 3. We've already released reviews for Frankenstein and Lynn Ramsey's Die My Love. Highly encourage you to go and check those out. We had a really fun time doing those. We do have plans for Predator Badlands. I need to figure out when that is going to be recorded. As of this recording, I'm not sure, but it is in the works. So it's going to come out soon-ish. I just don't know when. So again, as always, just subscribe. Be on the lookout. If you've seen that film, we will have a review for that coming soon. New women in session at the end of the week, as always. I think that's it. And then this weekend, what do we got this weekend? We got Nouvelle Vague. Hopefully we'll get to that next week.
Hopefully, yeah. I guess The Running Man is also in the running, pun intended. I have not been hearing very good things about it.
I have not. No, and it's real sad because we've gotten to a point now where, and our great friend Ryan McQuaid, I thought appropriately, and again, I haven't seen Running Man. Maybe I'll love it. I don't know. But I loved his tweet where he said we need to start having the conversation about Edgar Wright. And yeah, I like that might have to be the case. Maybe that'll be next week's main show.
I
having
guess
a conversation.
Maybe. I mean, I did love his documentary on the Sparks.
Yeah, I liked it enough. I don't know if I fully loved it, but I did really like it.
I mean, it's a minor work.
Yeah, for sure. And I like, to Ryan's point, I do think since The World's End, and some people might disagree, I am not that high on Baby Driver.
I don't like it at all. I honestly,
Yes.
I like that one less as time goes on.
And yeah, absolutely. It's even lesser in my mind now than it was when it first came out. I do think there's been a pivot point from The World's End to where we are now with Edgar Wright. He's only done 3 movies and the documentary. So maybe the sample size is too small. Maybe in hindsight, in another 20 years, we'll look back at his career and laugh that we even questioned it. But as it stands currently, I do think there's been a huge pivot point in terms of how we look at him from The World's End and all of his stuff previously to where we are now with him.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people have said he just has to work with Simon Pegg again.
Yeah, maybe that's the answer.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. So, maybe we could talk about that on next week's show.
All right.
I think it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
So, because I do like him. I am rooting for him. I want him to do well.
I mean, Scott Pilgrim's a masterpiece. The World's End is a masterpiece.
Yes.
Shaun of the Dead is a near masterpiece.
Yeah,
so, he's capable.
I know we disagree on Hot Fuzz, but I love that Cornetto trilogy. I think all 3 films are fantastic. Scott Pilgrim is fantastic. He is a good filmmaker. I just don't know where that guy went. I don't know.
Back. He'll be back. Hopefully, he'll be back.
Will Mavity on Twitter mentioned something about the Ant-Man fiasco. You look at that being the pivot point. I don't know. Maybe something happened there.
The timing is pretty coincidental, I'd say.
It is. It is interesting. Yes. Maybe that's a conspiracy theory I can get behind. I don't know.
Okay. He's onto something.
Yeah. At any rate, we'll talk more about that next week on the show. Which is to say, subscribe, like the video on YouTube, all that sort of stuff. Follow us on social media. Really do appreciate you all. Thanks for your support. Thanks for listening. As always, we will see you next time on the InSession Film Podcast.